But I said, nope, that's the end. And I no longer drive. I can't see well enough, so I can't get an animal to the vet quickly. Can't do that. Can't pick up a large dog of 85 pounds. A small one, yes, but I still couldn't get it there fast enough if there were an emergency. So that I stopped doing. So at any rate, those are some of the things that I do now and really enjoy.
Now you have some kind of screwy hours.
I do, yes.
What's your schedule?
This is, you probably won't believe it, no one does. I overrode my natural sleep schedule all the years, 40 of them, that I worked full-time and overtime. I don't know how I did it. I existed on 4.5 hours sleep. I never needed more than that. But I now go to bed at 3:30 in the afternoon and get up 11 p.m. the same night, the latest. Once in a great while, I sleep till midnight. I just don't need the sleep, but I cannot stay awake in the evening.
You like sleep on the swing shift.
I do. I'd be perfect for that, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I thought that would all change after I retired. I can't even stay awake long enough to see Jeopardy, which I'd love to do. I absolutely cannot do it. But in the morning, I'm dynamite. I can do it. So I'm having breakfast about midnight. You know, I've had 3-4 pots of espresso by then. I'm rolling. So that's when I do the important things. And I try to change languages that I read every day so I don't forget them. If you read one a day, and force yourself not to read English every day, so that I can do.
Well, how many languages do you speak?
Well, but none of these fluently, mind you. French, Spanish, Italian, German, and Romansh. So those are all.
But you can read all of them.
Yes, and I can write in them if I use Google Translate enough to fill in the grammar I don't know.
Right.
And that is very useful. I give it full credit for doing a good job.
Yes, they conjugate the verbs more properly.
And once you do one, of course, you can do them all because the structure is the same if languages are easy for you, and fortunately they are for me. It's one of my only 2 facilities, the other being writing.
Right.
So that's a natural thing. So I have friends that I shall never meet, unfortunately, in Switzerland and Germany and France and in various countries, because we've met in strange ways. You know, I work with the Max Beckmann Archive for all of his art in Berlin and Munich.
So what do you do with
I
on
facilitated
behalf of that?
the transfer of a donated sketch by Max Beckmann to the collection. And in the course of that, I got to know the 2 directors, absolutely wonderful women, Hedda Fink and Dr. Christian Zeiler, who head up those 2 institutions respectively. And in the course of that, I got to know the mother of Hedda, and we corresponded until her death recently in German and English, just by translation on Google Translation, with just a few. She spoke no English and I spoke virtually no German, but that teaches me a lot. You know, once you look it up, it pretty well sticks in your head and you don't have to look it up twice. So you add a sentence every time, maybe. So that was tremendous fun. And the ones in Switzerland are the relatives of a friend of mine whose trustee I was, in order to keep her family from stealing the money and to get it to them. So they, of course, were grateful and kept in touch with me.
Nice.
So eventually we got through very good estate attorneys. So that taught me how to be a trustee, which I have been for several people now. And mainly I do it to keep their family from dissipating the money before they inherit it. Because believe me, money turns people into monsters. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm a trustee. I'm really too old to be doing it, but I'm the only person available for.
Well, you have to be the adult
people.
in the room.
You have to be the adult in the room, and you've got to be cogent enough to do it. And fortunately, I think I still am, but it's hard to find younger people who know how to do it, or who have worked with attorneys long enough to be connected enough to do it. And I've studied with the best, luckily. I was never a trust attorney secretary, but since I became a trustee, I've learned from trust tax specialists about who can inherit what and how to avoid the wording pitfalls which befall people.
Right.
And how to keep people from stealing their money instead of putting it where it belongs in assisted living where they need the support. So it's a useful thing to do. I don't take a fee for that. You can take a large fee for that, but I think that's rapacious in the extreme. And certainly for friends, I'm not taking a fee. So I'm doing that for 3 people now. Someone has property in Mexico, I'm assisting her. And I'm not officially the trustee, she is, but I help her every place I can. And one trust was lost for 70 years in New York. which has just surfaced, and the sole remaining heir needs and deserves the money, and the New York court is attempting to appoint me trustee so that I can distribute the funds.
Excellent.
Yes, hopefully it will work. Again, excellent attorneys working very hard. They really earn their
Well,
money.
I hope you're properly compensated.
No, I don't take any compensation for that. I don't want any. I could be. You could make a lot of money by draining the estate legally.
Well,
no, I don't do that.
Which
at
is
all.
not to say that you would be.
I'm within. I wouldn't.
Take advantage of them, but I mean, it's
No,
you're performing a service that's certainly
Oh, this is
of
true.
value.
No, I don't need any
And
money. I don't
if you
need the
didn't
money.
do it for free,
Someone
else
would.
would be doing it, and
Yes,
they'd be paid.
And in some cases, that would reduce the money quite considerably, unfortunately. I don't need it, and don't want to do it.
Good for
Just
you.
happy to be able to do something for them that might save their lives a while longer.
You know, another thing I wanted to ask you about was you are a published author.
I am.
Yes. Please tell me the titles of your books.
Oh, only one book.
Okay.
But I'm a ghostwriter, basically,
Yes.
as you know.
But tell me the title
So,
of your book.
the one that I wrote is
Yes.
called The Castle Gargoyle, and that is a tribute to my husband, who was a very courageous, very ill person for many years. And that's based on the Castle Argyll, which still stands today at the corner of Argyll and Palm, maybe? At any rate, it is on Argyll in Hollywood. It is today the extremely august residence of the Episcopal Charities Assisted Living, which is very top drawer. When I was there, it was a tenement. When it was built in 1926, it was the glamour palace of Hollywood, where Cecil B. DeMille lived, and where Clark Gable lived, and where the stars lived. They each had a floor. I think there are 7 stories. When they were making films in Hollywood, it was very glamorous. And that is where I found Clark Gable's pipes, in the basement where the junkies stored the art that they stole. It was a fascinating time. That's in my book. You have to buy it.
Yes.
At any rate, I wrote that up for the North American Society of Pipe Collectors, and I became a writer for them. So all of my pipe and cigar stories, I being a pipe and cigar smoker for many years, are in those publications. But
Now, when was the book published?
the book was in 2013, I think.
Okay.
2013. Excuse me, that was when it was, my husband died in 2007. I wrote the first part of it. I actually can't remember. It was not published when he died. It was written to try and see if he could remember any of this, but no, his mind was, he had no memory of it at all. Because there were great adventures at the Castle Argyll and in the music business there.
Yeah.
At any rate, but anyway, the book is still available on Amazon.com. You can buy it for whatever inflated price they've got on it now. But what I do now is write for an Oregon Coast newspaper, which is Oregon Coast Today. I write features for them. Even from here, they kindly ask me to stay on and keep doing that.
On what topics?
I liked to write about the things that the coast needs the most: beach cleanups, saving the ocean, mobilizing the people who live in Lincoln City, Oregon, to help take care of one of the world's most stellar botanical gardens, which is tended by basically 5 women with not enough money. And it's one of the 60 most important gardens on the entire West Coast, from British Columbia to California. It's magnificent. So I wrote about that a lot.
Nice.
And lately, my current project, which was beautifully covered, fortunately, Oregon Coast Today, the editor is Gretchen Ammerman, and the publisher is Patrick Alexander. And they have always been generous with me. They've never changed a word of what I've written. They give me 800 to 1,000 words with photos of anything and everything. And what I want the most to accomplish is to help a friend who has written a huge research report, which took her 2.5 years to do, on child abuse, she herself having been an abused child. She knows wherever she speaks. It was written up as a part of the reform plan for the Oregon state government to reform the child welfare system, which is neglecting children all over the coast. There are more than 1,000 homeless children on the Oregon coast alone. Since COVID, there are more. Their parents are either gone or unemployed or sick or dead, and they are living under trees and in abandoned cars. At any rate, our goal working with the homeless there, which she and I did together, the author is Jo Frances Kalk, and her associate was Lynn Rudstrom, who has recently passed away, unfortunately. But before Lynn died, she took her expertise as having been a person who was in county government making summer camps for disabled children. And she took Jo's plan and presented it to the Director of Human Resources for the Department of Oregon at the state government in Salem, Oregon. And they were impressed enough to put it up for consideration to include in their child welfare reform for the whole state. So I wrote that up for Oregon Coast Today in order to give these two ladies credit. I mean, this is local volunteerism at its best.
Yes.
And in the course of the research that Jo Frances Kalk did, she proved that 80% of all homeless people anywhere, not just Oregon, began life as abused children. And we thought, nobody's ever going to believe this. Well, fortunately, just last week on NPR, there was an interview with Tracy Kidder. And Tracy Kidder is a Pulitzer Prize-winning author of many books, and his current one is called Rough Sleepers, obviously to do with the homeless. He embedded himself for 5 years in Boston with the program run by Dr. Jim O'Connell, which utilizes Kidder's research about you have to stop abused children from becoming homeless adults. Boston is making this work because they believed him. So I wrote to the chief of staff of one of the best legislators in Oregon, who is David Gomberg, and said, can you help us with this? This is already before the state. Can you promote it? So I sent a copy of this massive report electronically to his chief of staff, who is Luke Harkins. And they are trying to find out if the progress is being made within the state and if our redesign plan is being used. We don't want it to end up in file 13. So that is very exciting. So that's the project I have. So next I will write to Senator Jeff Merkley, who is an absolute wonderful firebrand Democrat, my kind of guy in Oregon, and see if he can help push this through. So that's the exciting part of writing features. I can write something like that's important. I don't like social trivia. Can't bear it. Can't bear the waste of word space. So I'm very lucky because whatever I write is on the website of Oregon Coast Today. Anybody can find it. And I've just been treated very generously because, again, as a ghost, you don't have a resume. I had no resume whatsoever as a writer except my little self-published, relatively unimportant book. But when I moved to the coast, Patrick Alexander, who was then merely the editor, not the publisher, gave me tons of space. Just took me that I sent him something, I don't even remember what, and said, this is what I can do. And I became the writer then for the Siletz Bay Music Festival, which is a wonderful festival on the Oregon coast every year, and for the food bank, which distributes, with a staff of 5 people, including the manager, 1 million pounds of food a year to Oregon families. 1 in every 5 Oregon families is on food relief. 1 in every 5. So that struck me as something valuable to write up, which I did. In the course of that, I had the privilege of making a funny intro that I hoped would draw attention to the food bank crisis. I didn't want to open the piece with something sad and something dreary, which it is. I wanted to get attention first. And fortunately, a good friend of mine inadvertently provided it. One morning, I was waiting for a blood draw with the usual empty stomach at the local lab at the hospital in Lincoln City, Oregon. And the group of us who were all starving to death, having to have a fasting blood test, were talking about all the things we would like to have for breakfast when we got out. And we were all impressing each other with all the things that we would never dream of bothering to make. We all really wanted a short stack with maple syrup and dripping pig fat. But we suggested avocado toast with smoked salmon would be fine. So we were discussing things in sotto voce of all these exotic things. And in through the door, in her wheelchair, rolls a friend of mine. And she is from the deep South where they don't mince words or shallots. And in she rolls for her blood test. And she had the privilege of one day of a third grade education and is one of the smartest people I will ever meet and has survived all these years working, never took a dime of welfare, made it through the world, raised her kid, my kind of person. So she rolls up to the window. And I wanted to find out a way to register to that window. I wanted to make a way to include her in the conversation because it wasn't her kind of conversation. And so I said, "Hey, you must be starving to death." And she said, "I'm so hungry I could eat the rear end of a skunk." So I opened that up with my food bank article, and that fortunately got people to read it.
Nice.
Yeah, she's a good friend of mine to this day. She's in assisted living down in Newport, Oregon, and we have similar flip phones, so we call back and forth on our flip phones. But anyway, her stories are fabulous, as you could tell.
Well, I think your stories are fabulous. I really enjoy reading them because
I'm so
you
glad.
have a great sense of humor,
Yes.
wonderful sense of detail,
Thank you.
and
Thank you.
you're able to create a cinematic picture for the reader in a way that is really,
thank
I
you.
think,
Well, thank